What would you say if a cop asked one casual question and your own mouth gave them the whole case? Because that happens every day, and one nervous sentence can turn a warning into handcuffs. Your words can open doors, your rights would have kept shut. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could save you from talking yourself into charges you never had to face. And like this video, so you can find it fast when you need it most. In the next few minutes, you're going to learn the exact lines that stop you from digging your own hole. The one question that tells you if the stop should already be over, and the polite sentence that blocks a search before it starts. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. The driver thinks talking more will help. It doesn't. It usually makes everything worse. Most people have no idea how fast a simple stop can change. 1 minute you think you're explaining yourself, the next minute your own words are being used to build suspicion. Here's the reality. Cops are trained to ask normal-sounding questions that get you to relax and start talking. You think you're being nice. You think you're clearing things up. But every extra detail gives them more to pull on. Let me show you exactly how to stop that from happening to you. When your lights flash behind you, your brain goes into panic mode. Your mouth starts moving before your mind catches up. You say things like, "I'm sorry, I'm late," or "I only had one drink," or "That's not mine," before the officer even asks the real question. That is the danger. You're not just talking. You're volunteering evidence. Here's the reality. A traffic stop is not the place to win an argument, tell your life story, or charm your way out. Your job is simple. Stay calm. Be polite. Say less. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Silence, used the right way, is not rude. It is protection. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings, and it matters more than your excuse ever will. The first thing you need to do is stop explaining. That sounds small, but it changes everything. The second the officer reaches your window, you may feel this urge to fill the silence. Don't do it. If they ask where you're coming from, where you're going, if you've had anything to drink, or whose stuff is in the back seat, you do not need to start chatting just because the question sounds casual. Listen closely because this is critical. Friendly questions can still produce criminal evidence. Here's exactly what you say. "Officer, I can provide my license, registration, and insurance. I choose not to answer questions." Word for word. Memorize that line. You're not refusing to cooperate with the stop. You're just refusing to help build a case against yourself. This is 100% legal. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it makes clear that you are complying with the stop while protecting your rights. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I'm not drunk. I just left dinner and had 2 beers." Then the officer hears an admission, starts watching your eyes, and now the whole stop shifts. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I can provide my license, registration, and insurance. I choose not to answer questions." Then the officer has less to work with, and the stop stays narrower. Watch what happens when you don't use that line. You start trying to sound innocent. You talk fast. You add details nobody asked for. You explain why your friend borrowed the car, why you were at that house, why you're nervous. But nervous talking does not sound innocent. It sounds suspicious. Former police officers have confirmed this works in reverse too. The quieter, calmer driver often gives the officer less reason to keep pushing. There is legal backup for this. Berghuis view, Thompkins matters here. In plain English, the court basically said, staying quiet is not enough by itself. You need to clearly say you are using your right to stay silent. That is why your wording matters. If you just sit there awkwardly, that can get messy. But if you clearly say, "I choose not to answer questions," you've made your position plain. Let me show you exactly why that helps you. It cuts off the stream of free information most drivers hand over without thinking. Have you ever caught yourself over-explaining when you were nervous? Be honest and drop a comment below, because once you see this pattern, you'll never miss it again. Now let's talk about the search trap, because this is where talking really destroys you. The officer says something like, "You don't mind if I take a quick look, right?" Well, now, that sounds harmless on purpose. It sounds tiny. It sounds like if you say no, you'll look guilty. But that is the whole game. They want your permission because permission is way easier than getting legal grounds. If you say yes, you may have just handed over your biggest protection. You look at the officer and say this, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Those exact 8 words, calm voice, no attitude, no speech after it, just that line, then stop talking. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because once you give consent, you usually lose the chance to fight the search later. This is 100% legal. You do not need to prove why you said no. You do not need to explain yourself. No is enough. Bad way. Most drivers say, I guess that's fine. I've got nothing to hide." Then the trunk opens, the bags get moved, and small things suddenly become big problems. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer has to rely on actual legal grounds, not your nervous approval. Watch what happens when drivers try to talk their way out here. They start bargaining. You can look in the front, but not the back. Or they joke, "Just don't make a mess." Or they say, sure, but there's nothing illegal. That is still consent. And once the search starts, your talking won't stop it. Florida v. Jimeno is the big lesson. In plain English, the court said if you give consent to search, that permission can include places where the officer reasonably thinks the item could be hidden. That is why your answer must be clear and early. No consent. End of sentence. This does not mean an officer can never search. If they already have legal grounds, they may still search. But your job is not to help them get there. Your job is to stop giving away rights for free. That single line keeps the legal fight alive later, and it keeps you from being the person who opened the door with your own mouth. The third tactic is the question that tells you whether the stop is still real or just fishing. After the license check, after the warning or ticket talk, there comes a moment where the stop should be ending. But many drivers stay trapped because they don't know they can ask the key question. They keep chatting. They keep standing there. They keep answering new questions that have nothing to do with the traffic issue. That is when the stop stretches from minutes into trouble. Here's exactly what you say. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Word for word. That line is powerful because it forces clarity. If you are free to leave, then leave. If you're being detained, now the officer has to own that decision. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. It helps you separate a normal traffic stop from a fishing trip. Bad way. Most drivers say, yeah, sure, what else do you need? Then more questions come. Good way. Smart drivers say, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then the officer has to either end the stop or justify keeping you there. Rodriguez v. United States is the case you need to remember. In plain English, the court said police cannot drag out a traffic stop longer than needed to investigate something else. That matters because many people stay in that gray zone by accident. They think they still have to stand there and chat. And yes, your tone matters. You don't bark the line, you say it calm and clean. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? Then you wait. No speeches, no sarcasm. No, because I know my rights. Just the line. Simple is stronger. Clean words give you cleaner protection. 90% of drivers don't know what's coming next. If you're still here, you're ahead of almost everyone. Hit that like button and stay with me. The fourth tactic matters if the stop turns serious. Maybe the officer says, step out or put your hands behind your back. This is the moment where too many people think they can still talk their way out. That is a disaster. Here's exactly what you say. I want a lawyer. I'm not answering questions. That is it. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it is direct and hard to twist. Miranda v. Arizona made this rule famous. Bad way. Most drivers say, I can explain, those pills aren't mine. Then every detail becomes a thread police pull. Good way. Smart drivers say, I want a lawyer. I'm not answering questions. Then the storytelling stops before damage spreads. If an officer lawfully orders you out, comply physically, but protect yourself verbally. Now let's tie the law together. Berghuis v. Thompkins, Florida v. Jimeno, and Rodriguez v. United States cover your rights. Let me walk you through a real-world stop. You hand over papers and say, I choose not to answer questions. If they ask to search, you say, I do not consent to any searches. In the right version, your words create limits. Next week, I'm dropping a video on what to say when cops claim they smell weed. Subscribe right now. So here's your recap. First, officer, I choose not to answer questions. Second, I do not consent to any searches. Third, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Fourth, I want a lawyer. I'm not answering questions. That is your playbook. Smash that like button if this script changed how you'd handle your next stop. Stay safe out there. C. 2026. Script Scene Splitter AI GitHub.